Welcome to this week's episode of the Scottish Property Podcast. My name is Stephen Clark, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Nick Ponte. How are you, Nick?
I'm all right, mate. I'm just laughing at you sitting there with your wife beater vest on with your suntan. How's the holiday going?
Well, you're in Glasgow with a hoodie on. I do feel sorry for you, mate. Today we've got a fantastic guest lined up and a great interview with Derek Mawhinney, a guy that he spoke on the Scottish Property Podcast network events in Aberdeen and Dundee, and each time we've heard phenomenal feedback on him, and I've missed every single one of his talks as well, so I've never really had a huge inclination of what he does, but getting him on, mate, it was a really fantastic high level chat, wasn't it?
Oh, I mean, like, I really enjoy the chat. This guy's got big ambitions, big goals. Talking about raising, 2.5 billions. I had to stop him and say, can I rewind that bit? Because, like, I've never talked to anybody about billions, I've talked to people about raising millions. But what's he raising this money for, Stephen?
So he's raising 2.5 billion to he's got quite a few missions. One of them is to eradicate homelessness in Scotland by 2035, which is hugely commendable. It's like he went into property, and rather than starting off small like the rest of us fucking peasants, he just thought, do you know what, there's a bigger picture at play. Here's some issues we need to resolve, and fuck it, I'm going to just go there straight away, which I think is brilliant. I mean, most people, myself included, we do this in reverse. Like, I've got goals and stuff I want to give back, and even when he touched on the homelessness thing, we in Fife and the areas I'm in, there's a couple of major towns, and you always see the same beggars, the same bits on the street. You can probably list them in one or two hands. That's it. And I always kind of thought to myself, once I get my portfolio, once I do what I need to do, one of the things I want to do is go and eradicate the homelessness in Fife, because it's surely not a big problem if you can house 10 people, 20 people. I don't really know exactly the numbers, but I thought they'd be quite achievable. He's fucking looking at 24,000 families throughout Scotland are going to be in temporary accommodation, and that's going to be big. And the cities he talks about was like Dundee and South Lanarkshire, Glasgow, and bigger cities where there's huge numbers. And he's going for those goals. It's like, wow, like they can
Yeah,
really, really.
I mean, why not? Do you know what I mean? You just think to yourself a lot of time. You always see these stories in the press. Not you're like, why is nobody sorting this out? And he's obviously tapping into private equity, and most of the time it's like people see the problem as getting solved by money coming from the public purse, so from government and stuff like that. Maybe that's why it's not happening. Maybe that's why the problem's not getting solved. Maybe it does need to come from private equity, pension funds, hedge funds, all the rest of it. I don't know what it is he's tapping into, but he talks about having meetings with these high flyers down in London. So yeah, we'll just get into the interview with Derek Mawhinney. He'll explain his model and what he's trying to achieve. Here's the interview with Derek. A very warm welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast. Derek Mawhinney, how are you today?
I'm very well, Nick. How are you?
Excellent. We've got Stephen here as well. You said he's looking like he's gone off to do the gladiators. His wife beater on out in Lanzarote. He's muted himself because he's trying to come up with an excuse that the Wi-Fi connection's poor, but he might jump in here and there.
I'm here, guys. I'm here. Thanks for joining us, Derek. Really appreciate it, mate.
Great stuff. So, Derek, you are obviously quite active on social media. We follow your stuff, so you seem to be doing really great. Seen a couple of videos and posts from you, so we thought it'd be great to have you on today and just really get a wee bit about your story, where you've come from, what you're doing now. So, take us back to the start then. Where you from? Like, talk a little bit about how you got involved in property.
So I was born in Dundee, spent most of my life there, was a roofer of trade, and really started to get into property at a young age. My father had some property that we got involved in, and was looking at refurbs and different things, was involved in a couple of individuals in Dundee, advising them on different bits and pieces. And probably 2018, 2019, started taking it a little bit more seriously, decided I want to make some sort of career out of it. Didn't know really where to start, so got into property education. Went and seen Paul and the team down there, and then took it from there. Originally, 2019 going into 2020, thought I'll just build a big portfolio, I'll raise loads of money, I'll buy property, and that'll be it, and life will be fun. And then decided quite early on that was a bit boring. Didn't really want to do that. It was just almost another job. And as 2020 hit and lockdown hit, was already involved in a regeneration project in Dumfries and Galloway with a friend and colleague of mine, John, who was doing a massive regeneration project down there, and really understood that there was a potential to do more of that in Scotland completely, whereas everybody was looking at when lockdown came with masks and flooding the place with all sorts of rubbish. I was looking more at the real estate of the government and of the NHS and really of Scotland to see where are our problems and how do we solve them. And I think the last 3 years have been about, you know, not only looking at master planning in various cities, but also looking at redundant assets that the public purse has, and then really looking to regenerate or reorganise them as such and make them valuable assets for the public. So that's kind of where I started and where I am now.
But what does that actually mean then? What sort of properties are you looking at acquiring, and what do you end up doing with them?
So every city has got redundant assets, and often what happens is that although they're redundant, they can be live. So we may have a GP practice in an old office block, or we may have a drop-in centre that's in an old factory, and it's essentially it's a quick fix to not a permanent solution. So we can come in and look at, looking at where these assets work really well and look at assets that are potentially costing the public purse a lot of money. And it's not that they've got to say, so our business focuses on three things. We focus on healthcare, education, and social housing. So we'll look at it from a point of view of, this building right here, it's redundant asset, it's costing the public purse £1 million a year. If we were to redevelop that for something, that benefited the public, whether it be GP practice, hospital, social housing, schooling, as long as it fits within that remit, or it could be sold on, we then look to reorganise that portfolio and see where that comes about. It all starts from local council, local government, looking at their asset register and looking at the problems that they've got, whether it be social problems, whether it be real estate related problems, and then basically working backwards from there into how we can fit that into the real estate portfolio.
So these are like empty council buildings then, and you're approaching the council
They
and
can be empty, or they can be partly used as well. So some of them will be used. Other ones are empty. So you'll see them on like the big four surveyors will sell property for the government all the time, but then you'll find that they never get sold. And the reason they don't get sold is because the people that are in there don't have anywhere to go. So you could have a building that, let's say it's in Bath Street in Glasgow, and the building's valued at £1 million, and you put a bid in at £1 million, and it goes to a closing date and it's never sold. You think, well, I offered you £1 million for that, but there's an underlying issue as to why these properties aren't being sold and why this money isn't getting back into the public purse. So what we look to do is solve these issues, get them into properties that suit, so that then the public purse can be reimbursed for, say, £1 million for that building, or it can be repurposed in a way that then serves the public going forward.
And why would they not sell that building to you at £1 million then? What would be the potential issues that sale wouldn't go through?
Well, if that's still being used in some capacity, you've got to remember in 2020, most public sector bodies were told that they had to double their footprint due to COVID. So there's a lot of real estate that sits out there right now that people are just, they don't know what to do, because there's so many different, statements coming out saying they need to do this, but then they need to do that, and they need to do the next thing. So it's really about pinpointing actually what does that department need, and then how do we deliver that going forward. So that's where we become the bridge for that and say, well, actually we can, whether it's convert an existing building into something that is purpose built, or we have to bring in a building that then is fit for purpose, and then the building that they're potentially in that isn't fit for purpose, that's never worked for them, can then be sold on for, let's say, £1 million.
So yeah, I mean, it's
not necessarily buying it from the council. Then it could just be repurposing an existing building or repurposing something else for their.
So it depends. Yeah, it really depends on what the need of that is. So it's really unique to what council, government, or public body needs. So there will be buildings that we can redevelop and then put into the put back in as are, and then there will be other ones that have to be brought in so that we can then get rid of some of these assets that no longer fit for that department.
This is a really, I mean, it's a really interesting model that you do. So is there any, could you give us a kind of specific case study so we can try and get a head around it, so we can actually, you know, see how it works in practice?
Not really, but I could talk to you about some buildings, and I could sort of not make the names up, but we could certainly go over a case study. So there's a building in a major city in Scotland that is used currently for healthcare. It isn't fit for purpose. There's 2 floors of it that are redundant, and there is another 2 floors that are sporadic staff that are in there. The building's been listed for sale, and they can't sell it because these people have nowhere to go. What we did with that is we looked at the overall footprint for that department. We looked at where all their other staff was, and is there a way of co-linking these together? So bringing them under one building where they would all work from, rather than them all working from random little bits. We needed to make sure that the centre was, you know, based around all the different avenues for getting in and out the city, and that it worked for them going forward. And then that's it. By doing that building, and I know I'm being very unspecific here, but by doing that building, it released 3 other buildings from the public purse that could then be sold on, and that money then put back into the public purse.
So these people that were in this building that had nowhere to go, so did you try and get are you talking about trying to get that building vacant then, so then you can do something else?
So that building will then be vacant, and that building will then be transformed into flats for people with complex disabilities, which will then tick off another box within the needs of that city. So everything we do is around the needs of the city itself. So whether it's Glasgow and its drug problem, whether it's Dundee and its mental health problem, whether it's whether it's any city with, say, social housing problems, when we go in and identify what the needs of that city is, then we can then start to look at the real estate and look at what's going on. It takes a collective point of view. Obviously, we can master plan and we can do it all from a real estate point of view, but you've then got to have the buy-in from councils, government, social work, etc., to make sure that everything is in order so that we can then move forward with this.
Is that not a nightmare trying to get the different departments in the councils to talk to each other and figure out exactly what they want?
It's not a nightmare, but it's like anything. You go into any sort of industry, and it's everybody's got their one job, and that's all they do. So when you've then got to bring everybody together under a banner of we, and say, okay, well, we are trying to do this. So everybody comes with their problem. And then you're then starting to say, right, okay, well, we solve this problem by doing this, we do this, we do that. We essentially bridge that in the middle. We bring everybody collectively together and then say, right, how do we fix this problem collectively? Because we can't, as much as I can come in and flood the city with billions of pounds worth of money, that money doesn't solve the problem. Like the NHS will burn through money. The Scottish government burns through money. So money's not the issue here. It's collectively solving a problem. And I've always had the basis that everybody, regardless of what industry you're in, are just paid on how well you can solve a problem. So we essentially get the right people around the table and say, right, well, how do we solve this? It is a headache, but it can be done, and it will be done.
So basically, you're doing like that one that you just described there. That's like what a lot of people would hear described, on courses and YouTube and all the rest of it, as commercial to residential development, right? That's like one of the strategies that you do.
But yeah, with that one building, that'll be a commercial building, a commercial office block that'll be converted into assisted living flats. Yeah, so yeah.
Is that the one you managed to buy through the company because you've solved the problems to vacate it and make other buildings useful for the people that needed it?
So once we vacate a building, if there's no real purpose for it and it's going to go on general sale, what we will try and then do is look at where else in the city there is a specific need. So in this specific city, there was a need for housing for people with complex disabilities. So you've then pulled in the third sector organisation that are looking for that. They're saying, well, what is it you need? There's then a specific design done for them on that building. And we're saying, well, if we develop this building to that, would you take a long-term lease, or can we sell this on to you? Yes, absolutely. So you've then secured a pre-sale lease or a pre-sale before you even purchase that. Yeah.
No, I can kind of relate to where you're coming from. Because I bought a building from the Five Council, and it was right next to a school. And it fucking blew my mind how they just never communicated one department to the other.
No.
You know, a lot of the real estate department are getting rid of this building, but then they've got shortages in the school and they're needing an extra classroom, and then you've got COVID kicking in.
I think what you've got to remember as well is, though, that they're not real estate experts, so they're coming from an education standpoint. They're looking after kids, they're looking after the welfare of them. They've got every right to say, well, we've got a shortage, but they're not really there to tell you how they solve that shortage. So I'd argue back that it's really you to go back in and say, listen, I could do this, 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 and this, and then that could be an annex on that school. You know, there's no reason why you can't do that. It's often us as developers and investors that don't have the big enough idea to go, well, actually, I can solve this problem. If you strip back, right, we're so good at saying, Nick's a letting agent, you're an investor, I'm an investor, right? See if we take all of that away and say, I am a problem solver, and you look at real estate from a problem-solving point of view, your mind will be blown by the opportunities that you could actually go out and solve. We niche down far too much often when it's actually on a wider scale. We can solve so many problems.
Is it because it sounds like it's very, very much like common sense that you think that surely that can't be a problem, because surely someone goes to a school there and there's...
It's common sense to us because we're in an industry where we solve real estate problems. Mm-hmm. But when you're coming from an education standpoint, that's not common sense. That's something so far out your comfort zone that you'll never ever think about that, because you're not there to think about that. You were never brought in to solve those real estate problems. So why would you? So it's not common sense to us, but not common sense to them. And that's why. Sorry, Nick. On you go.
Sorry, on you go. That's why. Keep going.
I'm just saying that's why you've got these issues, that you need to start connecting up the dots and say, well, actually, we could do this, or this.
And when, you know, just keep it on the case study. I know you can't go into specifics, but just so that people understand the kind of model and stuff like that of this particular project. So once you develop these flats, these residential units for people with complex disabilities, do you then keep them in the portfolio and make money off the rent, or like what's the exit?
So there's different funds that will hold different things. So we've got a fund that holds things on a long-term lease basis, which will then be broken up and sold, you know, as smaller portfolios. So let's say we hold 3,000 units on a 25-year lease within that portfolio. We may divide that into 500 units and sell it on to, say, pension funds, or, you know, to tier one investment funds, or we could, you know, hold it on for the 25 years. We would probably likely not do that unless we were partnered with a fund that wanted to do that. We'll always look to, you know, get out on exit as quickly as we can, because we're probably going through so much volume at the time.
So, like, you were talking about getting everybody together, solving the problems, getting all these, you know, different agencies and council people around the table. As a developer, why are you, you know, what's the incentive to you to make this so complicated? Because like other developers are cutting all that stuff out, but you want to, have you got a wider mission here? Is there more to it than just developing property?
I think if I was to develop properties, I could have done that quite easily, and I would have done that very well over the last couple of years, given how booming the market's been. My project's never been about making money. Money will be a byproduct to the success of everything else we do. And I know this sounds very cliche, but there is there's a legacy to be left here. There's an opportunity to really fix some huge problems in Scotland. And I think to myself, well, why can't we do it? You know, because the money's out there. The money's absolutely out there, and we can solve these problems. But do I want to look back when I'm 70 and think, oh yeah, I had a great portfolio, it's valued at £50 million, and I retired when I was 40? Is that going to leave me the legacy that I want? No, it's not. If I can eradicate homelessness by 2035, I can make our healthcare system slightly better by bringing better facilities to it, and maybe change the way that we do our education system, because they're the three main focuses of mine. Then I think actually, yeah, I've had a really good life. So money to me is not a big sort of chaser in my life. It's more about the real problems that we're solving. And as complex as they are to start, I think once we solve this problem once and we get it, you know, really working in a city, it's then a great case study to go to the next council, to the next government, and say, we've done this, we've done that. As much as I talk about this and say, get everybody around the table and it's all great and everybody, it's not. It's an absolute fucking headache. It's a money pit. And at times you look at it going, is this going to work? Like when you're at the casino, you're at the high limits casino, and you spent a lot of money on this. It's like, shit, what if this didn't work? And that was a gamble that I took. But ultimately, it was one that I wanted to take and one I knew that I had to take. And it's doing okay. So we're getting there.
I really like that legacy aspect of it. Like, what gives you that kind of driving force to rather than the financial gain, the bigger legacy purpose?
So I've made money and I've lost money and I've made money again, and I've always realised that money was never the driving force around what I was going to do in my life. And I always then thought, what is the purpose here? Like, what is it? And I remember, and this is not a get the violins out, moment, but I remember losing my mum when I was 19. I remember sitting in intensive care for 10 days, and I watched this body it was almost like it was processing something. And it was, and what I imagined it to be, and probably how I coped with it was, if you imagine yourself at the right at the end of your life, right? You're sitting in an old theatre with one of those big fucking old-fashioned reels, right? That's showcasing your life, right? And this is what I thought. My mum died when she was 39, and she, for the last 10 days of her life, was just getting shown everything. So at 19, I had this realization, like, what did my life look like? And okay, my story was never going to be great at 19, but what if I went at 39, or what if I went when I was young? Like, what do I want my story to be? How many lives can I affect by what I'm doing? And what can I change? And I think that's probably the driving force behind, what I do and how I get up every day and go about it. I want to have a great story at the end of it. I want to sit in that theatre going, what a fucking story that was. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, money's never going to get you there. So your car, your house, your bank balance, that's never going to get you there. Yes, it'll give you the opportunity to go and do amazing things with your kids. You're sitting in Spain, you're having a great time. Money got you there. But ultimately, going forward, like the real driving factors and the real highlights of your life won't be based on money. They'll be based on how you show up as a dad, how you show up as a husband, how you show up as a boss, how you show up as a friend. And it's like every single day, I just want to make sure that we're giving that 110%. There's days where it doesn't go well. There's days where you fuck up. Of course there is. But over the course of that period, I am hell bent on making sure that that legacy is one story to tell.
Did you say it was your mum? Did you say your mum died at 39 there?
Yeah, mum died when she was 39, yeah.
Wow. I mean, that must have had a serious, the trauma and impact on your life. So, I can hear the passion coming from you at the moment. So that must have an impact on what you're doing now for sure.
Massive. I think people that have lost someone so close to them will resonate with this. People that haven't lost will think this is the weirdest statement ever. But losing my mum at 19 was probably the biggest blessing in my life, because I started to realize how short life really was then, and started to realize that I actually really need to get a grip here now. I actually really need to realize how fragile life actually becomes. So when you see people moan about everyday nonsense, it's kind of like, does that shit really matter? Probably not. And it almost gives you it gives you this like feeling of limitless, because you're like, I could be dead tomorrow. Like, genuinely, you could be gone tomorrow. And it's like, is anything that matters right now really going to be that relevant? Probably not. So when I was raising like billions of pounds worth of money, so like to go into London and have to raise this money on a concept you put like heavy money into, you're like, you are sitting there going, fucking hell, what if this doesn't work? And it's like, well, it doesn't really matter, because we will find the money. The money's irrelevant. And then, I think everything, the trauma aspect, I probably didn't deal with the trauma aspect up until about a year ago. But it definitely was like a secret weapon for the last 10 years to push forward in business and really make it work as well as I have.
Well, I mean, I can't.
That's powerful.
Yeah, just can't really relate to that, because I've never been through it, but I have heard, other people on our podcast saying that, it puts things in perspective, doesn't it? When people are moaning, whinging about, minor things. So talk about where do you see the government failings then? And you're looking at trying to solve problems of homelessness and all the rest of it.
I don't think the government have failed as such. I just think that there has to be a collective drive to do more. We could easily sit here and point the finger at Nicola Sturgeon or Boris Johnson or Theresa May or whoever you want to point the finger at and say it's their fault, right? But collectively, we can do more. So like as Stephen's just realised there, actually, if I thought about that unit next to the school slightly better or slightly more in depth, then potentially I could have solved that problem for the school. But we are, as a society, we are so glued up to pointing the finger at somebody else when it's their fault. Never sitting back going, right, how can I solve this problem, or what can I do to make this better?
Yeah,
so
but
I don't.
You've obviously
On you
looked
go.
into the issue of homelessness, and
Yeah.
what is the system at the moment, and how are people? You hear about this issue
Well,
is not really getting fixed. So how can we be doing more, or how can you be doing more?
Well, the system as such is that, and don't quote. I think I wrote an article last week on this, and it said something like 24,000 families are permanently homeless in Scotland right now. So 24,000 families don't have a home. That's 24,000 families that will sit at Christmas time, whether they're in temporary accommodation, whether they're I don't know where they are. And to be honest, I don't want to think about where they are right now. But what we will do, and what we've done as part of our fund, says that we will eradicate homelessness by 2035, and we'll do it by doing the same model that I've just told you about, with redundant assets, with the buy-in from the council. So the council do have numbers to work towards. They do have a want to eradicate. There's nobody that goes to their work in the morning going, I am glad that there's homelessness in Scotland. I am happy that we don't have enough homes. Like, I do not believe that for 1 minute. But again, it takes collective thinking. It takes a plot of land that says, right, okay, I'm if in a developer, your standpoint is, well, I want to make as much money as I can on this development, so I'm going to put in these beautiful homes, etc., etc. Does that solve the problem of homelessness? No, it doesn't. So that's no real interest of mine. So, but does an old school that's been made redundant for 10 years, that's not getting sold for whatever reason, if I flattened that and put, a school, 150 homes and whatever else on that, and created a community out of that, would that go part of solving the issue in, let's say, South Lanarkshire? Yes, it probably would. So that's where we can kind of come in and say, well, that's what we are doing. So our remit's quite simple. With that part of it, all we're there to do is solve the issue of homelessness. So we go in, we look at building as many units as we possibly can, whether we sell them directly back to the council or we do them on a long-term lease through a third sector agency. We've done our job there. It's not just a case of building, a number, like, let's say, for instance, it's 3,000 homes in an area. You can't just go in and build on a load of fields and say, okay, well, we've done it. Because you've then got the community aspect. One, you can't build ghettos, so you've really got to look at the mix between mid-market rent. You've got to look at some private. You've got to look at social as well. Then you'll also have to start looking at the schooling issues. You'll have to start looking at roads. You'll have to start looking at, facilities as well. So when you go into a region and say, right, we're going to rid, the south of Glasgow of homelessness, you're not just looking at the housing situation. That's why you've then got to start looking at healthcare and education and everything that then does, brings together to bring a community together. That's why you need the buy-in from everybody else, because we can bring the liquidity, we can bring the master planning in, but it takes all the people to then build that village.
So where does the money come? Where does the money come from?
It comes from tier one funds in London or in America. So we'll essentially look at building a model, whether let's say housing's an easy one because it's really straightforward. We will look at what the price per unit costs us. We'll look at what the land costs us. We will create a mandate that says we need to make X amount on that money. And then we will then go to a fund and say, listen, we want to partner up. We have this opportunity for, say, 3,500 homes. This is what it looks like. This is how it's going to work. Are you in, are you out? And you'll most likely do that with 30 odd funds in London, and you'll get people that want to do the job. You've got these funds are sitting with a lot of liquidity, so people will always go back to 2008 saying it's so similar. We're going to crash and all the rest of it. What they don't see on the other side of that is banks are stacked the money. They've got a lot of money sitting there. They just don't have anywhere to put it. So it's why I always say that we need to be problem solvers, because we don't have a liquidity problem. We have it in the sense of there's nowhere for it to go, but it's all there. We just need to figure out how we're going to get it out.
At what stage does this money come in? Because surely, raising huge amounts of money is going to sit there at a cost to the project, I'm assuming, without getting off the ground.
So you'll draw down on that fund. So if you raise £1 billion, you're not drawing down that £1 billion. It's like it's a line of credit. It's a commitment to the project. So if you're going to a council and saying, well, we've got all these opportunities, we can build you 10,000 homes. You're not then saying to them, you're not then saying to your funding partner, similar to what you would say to a bank. You're not saying to the bank, oh yeah, well, I need that £1 billion now. It's sitting there as your line of credit. You'll have your financial director will draw that down as and when it's required. And then we work off it that way. We've got that commitment to the billion or to the 1.5 or to the 2. That really depends on how much money you've got to raise for that specific project. And then you draw down as and when required.
Yeah, because you know how long these things take. Like I suppose that I think you would just draw down bits and pieces at a time whenever it's going through a plan application, a proposal, or
it's specific to what you then need. So you're almost forward planning to, right? Okay, your financial director's going, okay, you need drawdown for infrastructure. You need drawdown for professional fees. You'll then need a drawdown to purchase the land. And then we'll then go on from there. That's his job really, to liaise with your funding partner, and then he'll do that way. We'll just bring all that together and say, here's when we need it.
So see, when you're like, what is your sort of role within this whole process then? Are you basically coming up with a whole plan and the proposal to go down and basically pitch to these funds in London and stuff like that? Are you having meetings with these people, or how does that work?
Yeah.
I'm really interested.
So my entire job is basically just, as heading orchestras, making sure that everybody does their job and getting us from where we started, which was a complete concept, to raising 2.5 billion in the last 3 years. It was understanding how that was going to work, getting the right people involved in that, and then going down to London and pitching. Basically, it's a similar concept to Dragon's Den. You go into these big banks or tier 1 funds, and you're pitching an idea or a concept to say, listen, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to do it, and then that's it. We then, on a day-to-day, I just make sure that everybody's doing their job properly, and they're good guys, so it's not like you're sitting on the edge of a phone or checking their spreadsheet every 2 minutes, but you're just making sure everything's working and flowing properly, and then just having the odd meeting every now and again.
So like, see, because like, I'm just like, the mindset for me is that, for me, that would be a scary deal. You talking about 2.5 billion, maybe not all at the one go, right? But going into meetings with people who are, part of, hedge funds or pension funds or whatever, you're talking about the city of London. I've just got images of like, just high flying people, Is that not intimidating from a guy that,
No.
like you obviously started out as a roofer, do you know what I mean? So now you're going into these big meetings raising billions. How do you get past that?
One of the first questions were like, so what is it? What is your background? And that was the hardest thing for people to comprehend, that this guy was a roofer. And these funds don't come up against the guy that was a roofer. And the next question is, what university did you go to? And I'm like, you're lucky I can spell my name. I'm dyslexic as fuck. Like, I cannot spell. So then they're like, right, okay. And then the next question is, how did you even come up with this idea? Like, how does this work? And you get a lot of them that'll bow out at that point going, this is a great deal, but we can't really understand what's going on here. And so we lost, let's say, a third of them straight on, because you've then not got your track record to go into London and say, well, we've produced it before. You've then got the other ones that are looking at it going, this is really speculative based on the fact that you are who you are. You've not got a track record in London. You've then maybe got another third that are going, this is a fucking great deal. We want in, and how much is it going to cost us? Let's talk about it. You're always going to have that, though. You're always going to have some funds that are really going to get it, and they're the ones that you want to work with, and you're going to get some that never understand you at all. From a mindset point of view, it wasn't difficult. We place money so high up on a tree, it's unbelievable. But when you understand the concept of money, and you understand that money also needs us, so we might be the idea, we might be the reason that money makes money, but money on its own does nothing. Actually, it costs them to sit in the bank. So they ultimately need us as much as we need them. If you go in with the theory that they are God or they have something up against you, then you're kind of fucked. You're always going to be this sort of slave to a fund. Whereas when you can sit level-headed, eye to eye with them and say, listen, this is what you do, this is your part of the puzzle, and this is what I'll do for that, then it should be very straightforward, and they should get that as well.
And how are they protecting themselves, Len? What sort of security are they wanting? What sort of level of due diligence do they do? So
they'll do obviously their own due diligence on the deal, on the contract, everything like that. But ultimately, they become a business partner. So you're not drawn down like a bank. You're doing a deal. You're basically creating an SPV or a fund with the tier 1 fund and saying. And that's where there is an expectation. So it's any relationship at all. There's going to be do's and don'ts of that relationship. What you must do and what you must not do. And for us, it was a case of, you provide liquidity when we need it. We will bring up a schedule that says, if we provide you with, let's say, 4 triggers to draw that money down, whether it's, sign contracts, planning application, whatever that is at that point, then we draw that money down and then we go from there. The security they'll have is that, they do ultimately control the money, and also, they own 50% of whatever transaction that we're doing anyway. So they'll have that security going forward. With something like a pre-signed lease as well, of course there's risks, there's construction risks and things like that, but ultimately most of it's already been ticked off before you're really putting a shovel in the ground.
Did I hear you talk in billions there? Because I'm going to rewind this. Did you say you've raised 2.5 billion, or was it million?
Billion.
Billion.
Right.
Billion.
So I just can't. I've just never heard. I've never spoken to anybody and talked in billions before. So where's that? Where's that? Is that just sitting still in the funds? Is that waiting to be deployed?
It's sitting. So essentially, think of it like lines of credit. So when we go into an organisation and we're saying we want to do this, 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 and this, let's say that initial transaction is going to cost you 150 million pounds. I can't go into that meeting and say, well, we can do all of this for you, when actually we don't have that line of credit. So essentially, you've got to go and you've got to do a lot of work to get your eggs in one basket, and then say, right, we're doing this, 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 and this. You then got to then step away for a little while. You've got to get your line of credit. You've then got to come back and say, right, we're ready to complete on these deals now. So that money sits in various SPVs and are just ready to draw down as and when required. So as I said, there's a build to sell, there'll be build to rent, and then there's a regeneration fund as well, which is essentially going in, doing various bits of master planning.
Usually that's the kind of the money will come second once the deal's agreed, but getting you in the door and proving to the council and saying, we've already got this fund order. So we 2.5 billion. We are serious and we can put to go.
Because Stephen, this was a concept. This had never been done before, so nobody was really doing it, or there was a few that were doing it, but not doing it overly well. You couldn't go to a tier 1 fund and say, oh, by the way, I want to go and do this, because they'd laugh you out the door and say, you're fucking mental if you think you're going to be able to do that. I had to put up my own cash to say, I'm going to do this. I'm 100% going to do this. And then I had to go back with the proof of concept to say, we have commitment, we have engagement, we're ready to go. What we now need is the money. And then we then need to sit and work out how that contract comes together, ultimately from a money perspective and how the money makes money, and also from an institutional or from a client perspective on how that works for the client going forward as well, and what that looks like for their funding. So there's a bit of chicken and egg, and then there's a bit of fucking hell, is this actually going to work when you've got that much money of your own sitting on the line? And then it comes together in the end.
Yeah, because all this money, it's obviously linked back to investors or pensions or something like that. So people are needing a return out of this, right? Like you say, how's the money going to make money? So is there a lot of pressure now on you to now come up with the projects, get everything basically tying together and get things moving? What have you actually done up to this point? Have you started any projects, or has there been any completed projects?
There's a number of projects that are starting and have been started. Our initial plan was to launch in January of next year, to really get things off the line. Have to remember as well, a lot of our stuff will be behind the scenes, so we never really want to be known for doing a lot of this stuff. We want it to be, whether it's North Lanarkshire, whether it's Dundee, whether it's Glasgow, we want the people that have designed, the people that are going to work in this, to be front and centre of this. You'll never hear me speak about 3,000 homes that I've done here, or GP practice here, or a hospital there, or whatever that's going to be. That'll always very much be behind the scenes.
But why is that? Because surely you want the positive publicity so that other councils will see you and go, these guys are delivering, so we can work with them. So they've got a track record.
We'll have that on paper. We'll have that, when we look at, we've got frameworks that we've done previously in the past through other jobs. We'll also build up frameworks, whether it's, in any of the major cities. We'll have that on paper to then go to another council and say, we've done this, 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 and this. But you'll never see me in the front page of a paper. You'll never see me online talking about, we've done this or we've done that. Yes, I might fanny about on Instagram and put a wee story up saying, oh, we're doing this, doing that. I'll never get into detail on it. I'll never, this is not a Derek Mawhinney show. This is not about, I do all this and I'm amazing. This is about, how do I make this region better? What does this region need to really be at its absolute optimum? And ultimately, there's somebody in Dundee that cares more about Dundee than me. There's somebody in North Lanarkshire that cares more about North Lanarkshire than me. And I want them to have that legacy. I want them to be able to sit back and go, look at what I created, look at what we done as a team. This is what we done. Because there's a lot of people in these government jobs or in big organisations that probably don't get, you know, the gratitude that they deserve. So if I can give them the ammunition to go out and say, this is what we produced, whether it's as a council, whether it's a government or whoever, I'll be able to silently look back in my film reel when I'm old and on my last legs going, like, I'll know what I've done. And I'm okay with that. I don't need everybody else to know what I've done. I'm quite happy just sitting in the background with everything that I do and just making sure that everything's working okay.
What sort of barriers do you get when, like you say, there's people in Dundee that care more about Dundee than you, but ultimately, people like they're not really a lot of time they're not willing to take risks, right? So if you're a kind of stuffy old councillor, or like, you know, they're trying to get things approved by certain organisations and stuff like that, and you've got over here, you've got, you know, the Housing Association who build the affordable rents and mid-market rents and all the rest of it, that have got a track record over 20, 30 years, or, you know, and then you've got Derek Mawhinney, you know, you've just said yourself, a lot of stuff's in the pipeline. How
but we work with them. So we are working for them. We're not working against them. I'm not there to hold these units. I've no reason to become a third sector social housing association. So if they're saying to us, we have a target of 500 homes in Dundee, but we don't know how we're going to get there, that's where we come in and say, right, we'll help you get there. So I'm not competition for anybody. I'm there to support everybody. So we'll never be the competition. If we are competition for them, we'll bow out. So if there's an organisation in Dundee that are saying, you know, oh, we want that bit of land and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, that's fine. We've got so much going on in this country that we don't need anything, but we will take everything that we've got. And we've ultimately got a lot of liquidity. So we can come in as a liquidity provider sometimes. We can come in on that deal, or we can come in and say, listen, at the end of it, you know, let's take the construction risk out of this for you. We'll take that on, and then we'll sell you that on at the end. There is no organisation that I can think of in the third sector that wants to be building their own properties. They want somebody to come in. They want them to you know, complete full envelope and then go, right, there's your keys, there's all your units. There's a 25-year guarantee on that. Thanks very much. See you again. And that's where that kind of works. I'm yet to come up against someone where I think, oh, do you know what? We're actually, you know, we're taking food out of their mouth, or we're doing a job that they could potentially be doing. If that was ever the case, we would just bow out. We would never be there. So we are there to bridge the gaps that other people can't.
Okay. I saw a video, I don't know, I think it's maybe a year or two ago now, a big building, I think it was Dundee, where you were in smashing it about a sledgehammer and stuff like that. So what's happening with that one then?
So that's going to be an office block. That's part of a wider regeneration project that we're doing. There's a couple of different assets that are getting moved about, and that's going to be an office block.
Was there not some story about? Tell us the story about that one. Was there some story about, like, did you not used to work in the building or something?
I worked there. That was one of my first jobs I ever had, and I lasted a week. It was a call centre. The guy, Steve, his name was, a total dickhead. And after a week, he stood me up in front of everybody. He started giving us like a bollocking. You're this, you're that. You're never going to be anything. You're blah blah blah. I remember sitting on the stairs of that building, you know, that day, going, I can't believe I'm being sacked from a call centre. And then, you know, it was just over 10 years to the day that I went back with the keys and I bought the building. Obviously, Steve had been long gone, fuck knows where he is. But I went back and bought the building. That building was just going to be a standard business centre that was going to house Dundee businesses. And then it started to then produce something that we're like, actually, do you know what? This could really bridge a gap for something else that we're doing. We knew that it was then going to have to sit stagnant for a couple of years. We then got in touch with, or by chance, I was walking in Dundee city centre at one point and met a guy, Adam, who was a well-known graffiti artist. And I'd spent a lot of time in America, and I'd said to him, I was like, why has nobody ever graffitied like an entire building before? Like, why don't we see that in Scotland? He's like, nobody's daft enough to give us a building. And I was like, I'll give you a building. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, 100%. So we've done 2 graffiti jams up there. The building's kind of covered in all sorts of amazing graffiti. Guys came from all over the world to do their stuff over there. So it's looking it's looking pretty cool. Everything from that building will obviously get tore down and recladded and reglazed and things. There's I think there is some photos on my Instagram actually of what it's going to look like. One of the local architects, John Filani, had done plans for it. So yeah, I mean, even that building right now has got a story with all the artists and that have been up there, and eventually it'll become, you know, an asset to the city. But yeah, it's yeah, that was an interesting one.
What is it? You know, you spend a bit of time on social media and stuff like that. What annoys you about this industry and, you know, some of the people that are out there, you know, doing things? You know, you talk about stuff like you're not in this for the money and all that. You know, is there any things that really get to you?
I don't think so. I think I unfollowed a lot of people or muted a lot of people in the industry because again, you're taking in a lot of people's, you know, whether it's their opinions, their egos, whatever else. So I don't really spend well, I do spend a lot of time on social media, but I don't spend a lot of time consuming on social media. So I wouldn't say there's a lot in the industry that annoys me. I think one of the things that I would say frustrates me more than anything is people's inability to see, you know, their potential. We come into this industry, whether it's through education or whether it's through, you know, influence from social media, and we take on this like really widespread, I'm going to be everything, rather than niching down and going, do you know what, I've got an angle into serviced accommodation, or I've got an angle into flips, or an angle into becoming a letting agent, or whatever it is, and going, I am going to do that. And then I see really good people, maybe 2 years down the line, and you've seen them at an event or you've seen them somewhere and you think, you know what, they're going to do really, really well. 2 years down the line, they're thinking about quitting, or they have quitted and they've got another job. You think, well, what happened? Oh, it just didn't work. And then you actually look back on maybe what they were posting or what they were getting in and about, and it's like you were just doing everything. Like I said it on a post recently, I don't understand people who one day they're a property sourcer and the next day they're looking for investment. It's like, what the fuck kind of message are you putting out there that one day you're buying these, you know, below market deals, which, you know, no issue with, you know, you could be an amazing sourcer about it, but the next you're then talking to pension funds or you're talking to an investor with a couple $100,000 and then he's reading you, or you're looking at it. It's a really mixed message that you're giving people. I don't think anything in this industry annoys me, but I think that probably frustrates me for people's own personal development, that they just don't really seem to have much of an angle. They're like rabbit in headlights, and that's why we see hundreds of people fail in this industry, because they don't have a niche to work into.
Stephen, I know you want to ask this question, so I'll ask it for you. So, you know, as somebody, Derek, who has spent money on, you know, property education courses and stuff like that, do you feel that, you know, that ultimately, you know, helped you get to where
100%.
you are now?
100%. It gives you a foundation to if you've got half a brain, it gives you a foundation to go on and develop from. It'll give you again that widespread, you know, low level knowledge on everything. You know, it'll give you an insight into this, and this. I think where property education then stops is that you then have, you know, there's nobody going to hold your hand and make you a millionaire. So you've then got to go on and take what you've learned from these courses or a course, and then, you know, put it into practice. I've seen people make millions and millions and millions of pounds out of property education. I've also seen people spend 50 grand on it and make fuck all. I think it's very individual. Like I don't think I could ever sit here and say, you know, Stephen Clark doing his property education is a scam, or Paul McFadden's a scam, or Samuel Leeds, or, you know, whoever's doing the education, whether they are or they aren't, in my mind, are relevant. They are giving you information. If that's on the internet, then so be it. If they've formulated it in such a way that it's easy to read, it's easy acceptable, and they're giving you their time, you're essentially paying for that. If you find that valuable or not, that's up to you. But yeah, I would say, in my personal opinion, property education has been vital for me going forward. From a networking point of view, to what I've learned at them, to the people that I've met, 100%, I'd spend that money again.
Excellent.
Excuse me, I think you nailed it on the head as well. Like, it's kind of all about the action, and you as a person, you know, anybody can know fucking anything, but, you know, 100 people can know the same thing, but, you know, only one person's going to do something with it, actually take action and make it work for them.
Absolutely.
So how do you see the kind of future panning out then? I mean, like, obviously you have your kind of bigger, you know, goals of trying to solve, what was the statement? 2035, you're trying to solve
there'll be no homelessness in Scotland by 2035. None.
So anyone listening, any investors listening to this, how could they reach out to you to help you with that mission? Any, you know, guys with deals, you know, properties?
So probably, it's hard because sometimes they don't like being contacted, but LinkedIn's a good one. Instagram's decent as well. I'm going to do more. So once the fund's up and running, once we've got a clear mandate for property sourcers, I do want to get and do more, networking events where I can show you what I'm looking for, how I'm looking for it, and how we can monetize that going forward. Like there is money to be made in sourcing us land. There's no doubt about it, because we need more and more and more of it. There is money to be made from a developer with maybe that's got a bigger bit of land that they're like, I don't have the liquidity to do this. We can potentially come in and take some of that land and bridge that gap where it makes it affordable for them. We're in the process of building that mandate just now. But right now, if people wanted to contact me regarding stuff like that, I would say Instagram or LinkedIn. And then, as I say, going forward next year, we are going to run some, not networking events as such, but more sort of informational type things where people can come along, they can chat, we can talk to them about what we're doing. We're an open book, so we'll tell them what we're working towards, how we're looking to do it. If they want to get involved in the local area, then absolutely, let's do it.
That's good, because I think your mission's got a great mission in it, and it feels like it's massive thinking, and surely with the help of a community or an industry, you could fucking easily achieve it.
We need everybody. We need everybody. That's why I say I'm in no competition with anybody. It's why nobody annoys me in this industry, because I'm not in competition with anybody. I'm not looking at somebody going, fuck, I want to be him. I'm not. But what I am thinking is that we collectively can do more. Like, you'll know more about Fife than I do. So if I was looking at an area in Fife where I was saying, look, I've spoke to Fife Council, they're wanting 600 units near Dunfermline. Can we link up for a coffee? Let's get involved. Let's get Sam involved. Let's get guys in the local area that are doing it, and let's collectively do this together. So after 600 units, we can all sit back and say, collectively as a team, we did this. How do we monetize it? How do we bring it all together? I don't know, but we will do it, and it'll start with a coffee, and then we'll work from there. There's no egos involved in that. There's no huge. Well, huge. If you've got 25,000 families that depend on you to have a roof over their head, then I could be motivated to go and work for that.
Loving it.
Why, you're saying that you're not in the competition with anybody, right? But why do you think that nobody's done this already, or nobody's tried to do it? Like,
because it takes huge amount of money. You borderline on insanity at some points. You'll hear more no's in a day than you ever will imagine. You'll lose most of your friends and probably people close to you as you build it, because it's a really hard thing to do. It'll push you to your absolute limits. It's something that's borderline on impossible when you've got that many people that are against it, in a sense of that they're so close to thinking. You just need to keep pushing forward and just go, this is going to work. And like, I remember someone asking me earlier on, like, what if this fails? And I'm like, well, it's not going to fail. We'll just need to keep going. And it's hard. It's hard. People are doing really well at small parts of this, and that's where we want to bridge in with them and say, listen, let's scale this up. Let's do more of it. Even from a construction point of view, like we've got to look at that and think that, why do construction companies fail? Well, they fail because they don't get paid in time. So we've created a system called LiveLink, which essentially, like, we talk about drawn down from a fund. But let's say a development costs 6.4 million. So main contractor comes into that development, and he's looking for, every month, he draws down, say, 250 grand. We've created a system with a local company in Dundee, or we're in the process of building it now, where they take photographs of everything that they've done in that month. We sign that off with our own project managers. As long as it's signed off and everything's done, that money's paid straight away. It's instant. It's not 30 days. It's not 7 days. It's not 14 days. It's paid instantly. So they've got constant cash flow to keep going and going and going and going and going. So although we say that, we've raised 2.5 billion, we're going to spend 2.5 billion in Scotland, we're going to raise these problems, you can go into real macro detail into what fails, whether it's in construction or education or anything else, and really start to dig into that as well. You then get good people in to do that as well, and we just push forward with that. We are not here to be competition for anybody. We're here to make an industry and ultimately a country much better for when we started.
You mentioned earlier on that it's hard and it's borderline insanity. Is it taking its toll already on your personal life and you?
Massive, mate, massive. So I lived 29 years in Dundee. I was with my ex for 14 years. I don't live in Dundee anymore. I'm not with my ex. These things all had to come to a natural ending. Like, I don't think whether it was or it was, the situation was always going to be what it was. I now live in Glasgow, new girlfriend. I've gone down a really spiritual sort of route as well, which only started maybe 6 or 7 months ago. But yeah, the guy that started this in 2019 and the guy who I am now are complete polar opposites of each other.
I suppose you have to grow as a person to achieve what you've achieved so far and raise that. You're not going to raise 2.5 billion by being the lad for Dundee.
Massively, mate, massively, and it's all about growth as a person. You know, it's all about looking at things from a wider lens and saying, right, okay, how do I learn? Like, a lot of these things are like, so we did raise a lot of money, and then Russia invaded Ukraine, and there was a stop on that money, and it's like we then had to go back to market and raise more money, and it's like that's a body blow at that time. You know, that cost me personally millions of pounds, and people don't see that side of it. People look back in a few years and go, "Oh, he got lucky, or he did this, or he did that," and he's just really lucky. But they don't see the emotional toll this sometimes takes on you. What I've also always tried to spin it back to, like, what is this trying to teach me? Like, what do I need to learn here to move on? At times, there's days where I'll turn my phone, like there's days where I've turned my phone off and I've just fucking disappeared, and I've went up a hill, or I've went and sat at Loch Lomond and went, I have no idea, I have nothing left to give. But again, you'll come back and more and more and more, and you're growing all the time as a person. But I would say, I'd say in the last 6-7 months, spiritually, grown massively, massive.
Last question from me, Derek. Obviously, you know, we're talking millions and billions and big numbers here, but, you know, ultimately, you know, you're saying you don't do it for the money, but you need to get paid to pay the bills and have a decent lifestyle as well. So are you having to continue with you still doing your roofing business at the moment until, you know, things really start happening for you?
I still have it. And I think, you know, there's part of me that never really wants to let it go, more from a where I started kind of point of view. I probably should have let it go a few years ago, and I think, you know, in the next 6 or so months we'll see it wind down, just because it was more of a nostalgia thing than anything else. But no, I think I do okay, and things will progress nicely come January into being in this. You know, I'm already here full time, but things will progress from there, and we'll build a bigger team, and we'll move on from that.
Excellent. Well, I really enjoyed that chat. I thought it was good. Thanks for being so honest and sharing so much about what you're doing in your property business. I'm glad you didn't pick today to go up to Loch Lomond and switch your phone off. So, but I totally get you. Sometimes you just need that time. So it's good, you know. Appreciate it, and thanks for joining us, Derek.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, mate. We'll post your details on the show notes as well, so that people can get in touch with you.
Great stuff, mate. Thanks a lot, guys.
As always, guys, thanks very much for your support in the Scottish Property Podcast. Remember to take a screenshot of the podcast and tag us on Instagram, join our Facebook group, attend our monthly networking events up and down the country. Stephen?
Yeah, guys, and monthly networking events are in Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen and Dundee on the first Wednesday of every month. So you can find the details on the scottishpropertypodcast.com events page on there. And we'll hopefully see you guys in person at one of the events.
Speak to you again next week.